Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are not just scratching the surface of a topic. We're really dismantling a worldview.
We are. It's a heavy one today.
Yeah, it is. We are looking at a blueprint that claims to explain why modern society feels like it is coming apart at the seams. Specifically, if you are a man living in the West.
Right.
We are analyzing a text that argues Western civilization isn't just changing naturally, it is collapsing by design.
By design. That's the core argument.
Exactly. The central premise we are unpacking today is that society has engineered a deliberate system of what the author calls gender apartheid. And this is meant to crush men under a false pretense of equality.
It's definitely one of the most provocative texts we have ever covered on the show.
Hmm.
We're breaking down the explosive ebook by Conrad Riker. It's titled Gender Apartheid, Emotional Damage, Female Supremacy, and Reparations for Patriarchy.
Quite a title.
Yeah, Riker isn't pulling any punches here. He is arguing that what we typically call progress is actually a sophisticated, deliberate system of female supremacy.
Now, before we wade into these deep and frankly dangerous waters, I have to give a quick heads up to everyone listening. We are tackling the source material exactly as it is written.
Impartially.
Yes, impartially. We are going to explore ideas that are largely banned from the mainstream conversation. We are not endorsing them, we are just reporting on what the book says. But if you want us to keep bringing you these unfiltered summaries of the most controversial books out there, please hit that like and subscribe button right now.
It really helps us keep the lights on and keep the algorithms at bay.
It does. So to orient us right away, Riker explicitly states right at the beginning that this deep dive is for the awakening man.
The awakening man, right. So if you are listening and you are familiar with terms like the red pill or the manosphere, or honestly, if you have just felt that the deck is stacked against you in family court or the corporate world, Riker is speaking directly to you.
He is mapping the history of how our institutions were captured by feminist and Marxist ideologies.
Now we should mention we're distilling a massive amount of complex theory, history, and data here today.
Oh yeah, we are barely going to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
If you want the full deprogramming experience, and trust me, there's a lot more in there, you need to grab the full ebook on Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books.
We are giving you the map, but the book is the territory.
So let's start with the core diagnosis. Riker opens by defining the psychological state of the modern Western male. He calls it the double bind.
The double bind. This is a concept I think a lot of guys feel intuitively, even if they haven't put a name to it.
Yeah.
It is the classic damned if you do, damned if you don't trap.
Right. Society issues contradictory commands to men. On one hand, you have the cultural mandate to open up.
We see this everywhere in media right now.
Everywhere. Be vulnerable. Share your feelings. Don't be a stonewall. But Riker argues this is actually a trap, and he uses this really vivid story of Jake from Ohio to illustrate it.
The Notebook scenario. This one hit home for a lot of readers, I think. So Jake is watching this movie, The Notebook, with his wife, and he decides to finally let his guard down. He cries. He thinks he is doing what he has been told a good modern man does. He is showing emotional availability.
But then 3 weeks
Later, his wife files for divorce.
Whoa.
And the reason she gives is a loss of respect. Riker's point here is that while women say they want vulnerability, their biological programming dictates otherwise. According to the book, they lose attraction to what they perceive as weakness.
But here is the bind. Here is why it is a psychological torture chamber, according to the author. If Jake had sat there stone-faced, or if he acts stoic in other parts of his life, he gets slapped with the label toxic masculinity.
Precisely. If you show weakness, you are divorced or friend-zoned because you lack frame. If you show strength, you are toxic and oppressive. You cannot win within the current rule set.
And Riker argues this isn't accidental bad luck. It's not just relationships being hard. This is what he calls the apartheid apparatus.
The apartheid apparatus, yes. He traces this back to institutional capture. This idea that specific ideologies have taken over the machinery of society.
He points specifically to the influence of cultural Marxism in schools and media, right?
He does. He argues that before this capture, institutions were designed to facilitate merit and family stability. Now they are designed to dismantle those things. And he introduces a very specific philosophical concept here that is crucial to understand his argument. Repressive tolerance.
Repressive tolerance. That's from the philosopher Herbert Marcuse. It sounds like an oxymoron.
It is intended to be.
Yeah.
Riker argues it has been weaponized by the modern left. The basic idea of repressive tolerance is that to create a truly tolerant society, you must be intolerant of the intolerant.
Okay.
But in practice, Riker says this means The gynocracy.
which is his term for female-centric rule.
Exactly. The gynocracy preaches inclusion while actively silencing any dissent.
So it's tolerance for me, but not for thee.
That's the argument. It explains why you see someone like Jordan Peterson protested or banned for discussing biological differences, while radical gender theory is pushed as absolute fact in kindergarten. It is a rigged game where only one side is allowed to speak.
Riker argues this is why men feel like they are going crazy. They are being gaslit by the very institutions supposed to educate them.
And according to the book, nowhere is this game more rigged than in the legal system. He uses the term systemic gynocracy to describe family courts.
The data he presents here is pretty stark. Riker cites that mothers win approximately 90% of contested custody cases.
90%.
Yeah. He argues that is a statistical anomaly that suggests bias, not justice. He tells a story of Mike, a welder from California, to really drive this home.
This is a rough one to read. This guy did everything right according to the traditional script.
He did. Mike is the archetype of the dutiful provider. He built the house with his own hands, paid the bills, worked overtime.
But when the divorce happened, none of that merit mattered. The court system dismantled his life, gave the house to the ex-wife, and restricted access to his children to every other weekend.
Riker argues that the legal system views fathers essentially as success objects to be harvested for resources, not as equal parents.
That brings us to the financial aspect of the courts. Alimony. Riker doesn't mince words here. He calls it a reparations racket.
A reparations racket.
He views it as legalized theft. The statistic in the book is that 97% of alimony payers are men.
97%.
Yes, you have this scenario where men are living in studio apartments, eating ramen, while their ex-wives are living in the houses those men paid for, often with new partners.
Riker argues this is a wealth transfer based solely on gender. It is a literal reparation for the crime of being a patriarch.
It effectively flips the narrative of privilege on its head. We hear about male privilege constantly in the mainstream. But Riker points to something he calls the glass cellar.
The glass cellar. This is a fascinating counterpoint to the glass ceiling. We all know the glass ceiling narrative. Women supposedly blocked from the CEO suite. But Riker asks us to look down. The glass cellar is where the dirty, dangerous, and lethal work happens.
The jobs that actually keep the lights on and the water running.
Exactly. Riker notes that men comprise 93% of workplace deaths. Men hold 97% of infrastructure jobs. Sewage maintenance. High voltage line repair, deep sea oil drilling.
So Riker's argument is, how can you call a gender privileged when they're the ones dying in coal mines and falling off scaffolds to keep civilization running? He says society pathologizes male survival as privilege while totally ignoring male disposability.
And he connects this disposability to the corporate world as well, specifically the DEI agenda, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right. He uses Iceland as a case study for this. Iceland mandated gender quotas on corporate boards. It had to be 40% female by law.
And what happened?
Riker cites data showing that profit margins in those companies collapsed by 12% on average within 2 years.
12% is a massive drop in corporate value.
It is. And Riker argues this is the inevitable result of replacing competence with ideology. It's the Bud Light moment writ large. When you prioritize immutable characteristics like gender or race over merit, and skill systems degrade.
He argues we are watching this degradation happen in real time across the Western economy. We are prioritizing feelings over physics and finance.
I want to pivot to the educational aspect here because this feels even more insidious in the text. The book discusses the drugging of boyhood.
This is where Riker claims the war on masculinity really begins, in the classroom.
He cites that around 18% of boys are medicated for ADHD. His argument is that schools have become hostile environments for natural masculinity. If a boy is energetic, competitive, or rough and tumble, he is treated as defective.
He makes a historical comparison here that is quite vivid. The Spartans.
Yes, the Spartan the Gauge. The Spartans understood that boys needed to be forged. They took boys and trained them through hardship to be warriors. They built resilience.
But Riker contrasts that with today, where he says, we are manufacturing eunuchs. We medicate the energy out of them.
We teach them that their natural instincts to compete or fight are toxic. We are effectively neutering the next generation before they even hit puberty.
It is a fundamental clash of worldviews, and that actually leads into the theoretical framework Riker uses to explain reality itself. He brings up the CTMU, the cognitive theoretic model of the universe.
That sounds incredibly technical. How does he apply it to gender?
It is a high-level metaphysical theory, but Riker simplifies the application. The CTMU posits that reality is structured on hierarchy and polarity. It is like binary code. You need 0 and 1. You need order and chaos. You need masculine and feminine.
So he's arguing these aren't just social constructs that we made up in the 1950s.
According to Riker, no. They are fundamental to the architecture of the universe. When woke ideology tries to blur these lines, saying a man can be a woman or that gender is fluid, Riker argues they aren't just changing social norms.
They're trying to collapse the structure of reality.
It creates chaos. He argues that by denying the differences between men and women, by pretending a fate is just a defective woman, we are actively dismantling the foundations of civilization.
Which brings us to the social landscape men are navigating today under these conditions. He calls it the blue pill matrix, and he has a lot of disdain for the nice guy strategy.
He really goes after the concept of the male ally, or the simp. Riker argues that many men think if they just agree with everything feminism dictates, if they apologize enough, they will be safe, they will be rewarded.
But he shares the story of Dave to show that is absolutely not true. Dave is a tragic figure in the book. He was the ultimate ally. He shared the DEI committee at his tech firm.
Right.
He publicly shamed other men for toxic behavior. He even drank out of a male tears mug to show he was one of the good ones.
And it didn't save him.
Not at all. His wife still divorced him, took the kids, and ironically, he was eventually fired over a false harassment claim. The system he helped build ate him alive.
Riker's point is crucial here. You cannot appease a system designed to destroy you. Sympathy, as he calls it, earns you crucifixion, not rewards.
There's also the financial aspect of simping. He tells the story of Jason.
This is what Riker calls digital cuckoldry. Jason sent $8,000 to an OnlyFans creator.
$8,000.
Yeah. He deluded himself into thinking he was building a real connection. But later, screenshots leaked of that creator mocking him in a group chat, calling him a pay pig.
Riker uses this to illustrate a broader point. Men are transferring their resources to women who literally despise them.
That resource transfer brings up a really terrifying term Riker uses: reproductive asymmetry. We hear my body and my choice constantly regarding abortion.
Riker counters that with the reality for men. Your wallet, your responsibility.
Right.
If a woman wants to end a pregnancy, it is her choice.
But
If she wants to keep it, the man pays for 18 years regardless of his choice. But it gets even darker when he delves into paternity fraud.
the numbers on this were shocking in the text.
They are. The general stat often cited is 1 to 3%. But Riker points out that in contested cases where a man already has a suspicion and requests a test, the rate of non-paternity is between 10% and 30%.
That is up to 1 in 3 men in those situations raising a child that isn't theirs.
He calls it genetic trickery. Men are investing their resources, their love, and their legacy into bloodlines that aren't theirs. And in many jurisdictions, even if you prove the child isn't yours, the court can still force you to pay child support if you've acted as the father for a certain period.
Riker views this as state-enforced cuckoldry.
When you stack all this up, the family courts, the workplace deaths, the erasure of fathers, the drugging of boys, where does Riker say this is leading us?
To the fall of Rome. He draws a direct parallel between the feminization of the later Roman Empire and our current state.
He points to demographic collapse as the ultimate scorecard. Look at South Korea or Sweden. Birth rates are plummeting well below replacement levels.
He had that really memorable quote about what feminism promised versus what it delivered.
Feminism promised liberation, but delivered extinction and cat cafes.
Extinction and cat cafes.
He argues that we have traded families' legacy and tribes for corporate careers and lonely studio apartments. By destroying the incentive for men to become fathers and husbands, society has essentially signed a suicide pact.
Okay, that is a very bleak picture. It feels almost hopeless reading through that middle section.
It does, but the book doesn't end there. The final section is the restoration roadmap. He wants to help the listener reclaim dominion.
Right. This isn't a book about just complaining on the internet. It is a manual for action. And the first step is psychological. Reject the victim mindset.
Which means stop being a simp.
Stop simping. Stop apologizing for being a man. And crucially, reject therapy speak. Riker argues that modern therapy is often designed by women for women. It pathologizes male instincts.
It tries to fix men by making them more verbal and emotional.
He says you need to reject that frame entirely. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be unleashed.
He then pivots to something very tangible. Hardship. Embrace hardship.
This goes back to the Spartan idea. He advocates for physical strength, lifting heavy weights. He cites the testosterone boost that comes from heavy lifting.
But it is more than just health right. It is about building a physical vessel that commands respect. People treat a strong man differently than a weak one. He presents that as just a biological fact.
And career-wise, he has a specific take on what kind of jobs men should pursue in this environment.
He praises the micro approach, master tangible skills, welding, plumbing, electrics coding, things that have objective pass-fail metrics.
High competence fields.
Exactly. Riker argues that these are fields that cannot be faked. You can't DEI hire your way through a high-voltage line repair. You either know how to do it or you die.
If you have a skill that keeps society running, you have leverage. You become harder to cancel.
Then he moves to the spiritual or structural advice, the divine alignment.
This references his interpretation of Genesis, the God protocol. He argues that the intended order is Adam having dominion and Eve as the helper.
Now, he is not saying go home and be a tyrant. He is saying men need to take responsibility for creating order. He calls for building father fortresses.
I loved that term, father fortresses. What does that look like practically for you, the listener?
It means creating a zone of order and value that is independent of the corrupt system. Build parallel systems. If the school is drugging your son, you figure out how to homeschool him.
If the corporation hates you, you start your own trade business.
You build a fortress of resources and values that the state cannot easily crumble. You become self-sovereign.
And finally, he offers some very practical, almost cynical legal advice regarding marriage.
It is pure self-preservation. He talks about the necessity of prenups with hard infidelity clauses. If the laws are rigged, you need a private contract to protect yourself. But he also discusses the MGTOW philosophy.
Men going their own way.
Exactly. Riker argues that for some men, exiting the matrix and avoiding marriage altogether is the only rational move until the laws change.
It is a form of passive resistance.
You starve the beast by refusing to feed it your resources. You refuse to participate in a contract where the other party is incentivized to break it.
It is a lot to process. It is a complete inversion of everything you hear in the mainstream media.
It is, and that is the entire point. Riker ends the book with a call to be unbroken. He presents a choice to you. You can remain a slave to a system that hates you, paying into a system that mocks you. Or you can reclaim your birthright of authority.
It reminds me of that final image he leaves us with, the lion versus the zoo animal.
That is the provocative thought I want you, the listener, to really mull over today. Riker asks, are you a lion living in the wild, facing danger and hunger but possessing true freedom and authority? Or are you a zoo animal, safe-fed, perhaps even comfortable, but neutered and caged for the amusement of others?
Which one are you choosing to be when you walk into work tomorrow, when you interact with your partner? It is a question that haunts you.
It should.
Yeah.
And if you want to explore that question further, you need to read the full text. We have covered the outline, but the book is packed with the data, the philosophy, and the fire. You need to really understand this shift.
So here's what you need to do. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now. Search for Gender Apartheid by Conrad Riker. Buy it. Read it. Deprogram yourself.
And don't forget to follow the author for his ongoing analysis. He is at Conrad N. Riker on Substack. The conversation continues there.
And finally, if you got value from this deep dive, if you want us to keep bringing you these forbidden truths impartially and directly, please like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you listening.
Stay unbroken.
We will see you next time.